Part 2 of Rearview America, a ride through encampment, panhandling, homelessness, and poverty divide. Welcome to the Part 2 of Rearview America, a ride through encampment, panhandling, homelessness, and poverty divide by Asada, the Cynic Driver's YouTube channel. In this deeply reflective story, narrated by a cynical rideshare driver in Minneapolis, he encounters a series of people affected by homelessness: a single mother, a teenager, a veteran, a nonprofit worker, and others, each representing different faces of a complex crisis. These encounters dismantle his cynicism and awaken his sense of humanity. Watch to the end to find out if the driver is transformed, not into a savior, but into a witness willing to see, to speak, and to act. Find out if the story becomes a call to compassion, a challenge to confront systems of inequality, and a reminder that homelessness isn't just their problem, it's ours. Before we dive into the story, we encourage you to rate the video and tell us in the comments below where you are watching from. Like, share, and subscribe so that you will be the first to be notified of our next video, Part 3, coming up. The next pickup was from a strip mall downtown. A young guy, probably mid-20s, wearing a hoodie and earbuds. He barely looked at me as he slid into the back seat. I greeted him anyway. "Evening, man. How's it going?" He shrugged. "Tired." That was all. We pulled into traffic. As I drove, I couldn't stop thinking about the earlier conversation. My mind kept replaying pieces of it, especially the part about being one disaster away. I glanced at the kid in the mirror. He looked drained, not hungover or strung out, just worn. "Long day?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "2 jobs. Got to be back at the warehouse by 6. I nodded in return. "You get any sleep?" "About 3 hours last night. Car broke down last week, so I've been taking buses, and now this ride." I felt a lump rise in my throat. This kid wasn't homeless. Not yet. But he was on that thread, that invisible one the woman had mentioned earlier, and nobody walking by him would ever know. No sign, no tent, just exhaustion in the eyes. "You hanging in there?" I asked. He looked up and smiled faintly. "Trying." And that was everything. When I dropped him off, he thanked me and jogged toward the back entrance of a building marked "Employees Only." I watched him disappear into the fluorescent glow of a hallway, wondering how many more like him were out there. People we call lucky because they aren't on the street, but who live every day on the edge, the invisible homeless, the soon-to-be forgotten. As I pulled back into traffic, I couldn't shake the thought. What if our homelessness crisis isn't just about those we see, but also about the ones we miss, the ones still pretending everything's fine because they have no other choice? We think homelessness means tents and signs and street corners, but sometimes it means sleeping in your car between shifts, or living in a motel with your kids, one eviction away from nowhere, or working 3 jobs and still not affording rent. And we ignore it because it doesn't fit the image we've learned to fear. But the line is thinner than we want to admit. I know that now. I've driven enough people to know what desperation looks like, even when it's dressed in a name badge and a fake smile. I picked up another ride, an older woman headed to the hospital. "She's having a baby," she said proudly as she buckled her seatbelt. "My first grandchild." Her excitement warmed the car. It reminded me of what hope sounded like. As we drove, she started talking about the baby shower, about knitting little socks, about praying the baby grows up in a safer world. "This world's gotten so hard for young people," she said. "When I was their age, you could work 1 job and buy a house." I nodded. Now they work 2 and can't afford rent. She looked out the window and sighed. "We used to say hard work would take you far. Now I'm not sure." We passed another cluster of tents, and she got quiet. "I know some folks make bad choices, but not all of them. Sometimes life just turned." I looked at her in the mirror. "You're right. 1 wrong turn. That's all it takes." She nodded. "That's why I pray this child grows up in a country that values people more than profits, because we're losing that, aren't we?" I couldn't lie. "Yeah, we are." After I dropped her off, I pulled into a gas station to take a break. The sun was setting, painting everything in gold and shadow. Across the street, a man sat against the wall of a closed laundromat. He wasn't begging, just sitting, staring. I bought him a sandwich and a bottle of water and walked it over to him. "You hungry, man?" I asked. He looked up, surprised. "Yeah," he said softly. "Thanks." He took it with both hands as if I'd handed him something sacred. I didn't say much else, just nodded and walked back to my car. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't a system. But it was something. A moment. A human connection. And in that moment, I realized something important. Helping doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't need cameras or policies or applause. Sometimes it's as small as a sandwich and a little dignity. That man may forget my face, but I won't forget his, because that night he reminded me that everyone deserves to be seen, even when the world teaches us to look away, especially then. I sat in the car and watched the last light drain from the sky. City lights flickered on one by one, neon signs glowing in defiance of the darkness. My next ride request buzzed in, but I let it sit a moment. I needed to breathe, to process, to remember. This job doesn't come with health insurance or a retirement plan, but it gives you something else, a window into real lives. It shows you the truth behind the glass towers and boarded-up windows. And tonight, the truth hit harder than usual. We're not just dealing with homelessness. We're dealing with disconnection, with a system that asks the poor to do the impossible and then punishes them for failing, with a society that measures worth by income and blames the fallen for falling. But we can be more than that. We can challenge the narrative. We can choose compassion over convenience. We can ask better questions and demand better answers. Maybe I can't fix everything, but I can listen. I can care. I can share what I see. And maybe that's where change begins. Not with solutions, but with stories. Not with policy, but with presence. I accepted the next ride. A quiet young woman in scrubs, headed to the night shift at a nursing home. "Third double shift this week," she said, yawning. "Rent just went up again." I asked her if she liked her job. She smiled, tired but genuine. "I do. I love caring for people. I just wish it loved me back." Her words hit me. Here was someone doing one of the hardest, most important jobs, and still barely scraping by. "You ever thought about leaving the city?" I asked. She shook her head. "Where would I go? My patients are here. My family's here. I'm just hoping things get better." She leaned back, eyes heavy. "Sometimes I think I'm one bad paycheck away from living in my car." That same phrase again, one paycheck away. It was starting to sound less like a cautionary tale and more like a reality for millions. She wasn't homeless, but she lived with the fear of it, and that fear shaped everything. I realized then, homelessness doesn't always start with a tent. It starts with anxiety, with not sleeping, with knowing the system won't catch you if you fall. That's where it begins. When I dropped her off, she thanked me and walked toward the nursing home side door, her badge glowing in the floodlight. I watched her go, then checked my rearview mirror. Empty again. Just me and my thoughts. I wondered how many essential workers lived in borrowed spaces, split rent with strangers, or juggled bills like juggling knives. We rely on them to care for our elderly, deliver our food, clean our buildings. But they can't rely on us to guarantee a roof over their heads. That disconnect should outrage everyone. But instead, we normalize it. We treat struggle like a character flaw instead of a symptom of a broken system. I used to believe hard work was the ticket out, but the more I drive, the more I see people working harder than ever and going nowhere. It's like pedaling a bike with no chain, all effort, no movement. And yet these people keep going. That kind of resilience should be met with support, not punishment. But until our policies reflect that truth, it'll be folks like her, exhausted, afraid,
determined, who carry the weight. And one day even they might collapse under it.
As I cruised through the city, I passed a billboard for a luxury high-rise. Live above it all. The irony was thick. Above what, exactly? Above the people camping on the sidewalks? Above the ones driving you to work? Above the world that makes your lifestyle possible? It made me angry, not because people shouldn't live well, but because comfort shouldn't require invisibility. I thought about that woman in scrubs and all the others like her. When did we decide that some people deserve the sky, while others barely get ground? I don't have the answer, but I know this. Dignity shouldn't be a luxury. A safe place to sleep shouldn't be a dream. You can't build a society on exclusion and expect it to thrive. The cracks will always show, and when they do, it won't just be the poor who fall through. They'll take the whole floor with them. Maybe that's what scares people most, that the system they believe in is a house of cards. So they distract themselves, look away, change the subject. But I drive through those cracks every day, and they're only getting wider. I stopped for gas again, this time near the edge of town. The station was quiet. A man in a tattered coat stood by the air pump, warming his hands over a styrofoam cup of coffee. I nodded to him. He nodded back. That small gesture felt bigger than it should have. Just acknowledgement. No fear, no pity, just human recognition. I paid for my gas, then bought another sandwich and a hot drink. When I offered them to him, he smiled and said, "Thank you, brother. You don't know what that means." I didn't ask his story. I didn't need to. I could see enough in his eyes. Exhaustion, grief, a spark of gratitude. We talked for a few minutes, nothing deep, just weather and football. But when I left, he said, "You're the first person who's talked to me today." That broke me a little. Imagine going an entire day without anyone saying your name, no one seeing you. That's what homelessness does. It erases people. And sometimes the most radical act isn't giving food or money. It's saying, "I see you." Because when someone feels seen, they remember they still exist. And that's the first step back. Back in the car, I sat for a moment and just breathed. This job doesn't pay much. It's unpredictable. Some days you deal with drunks or screamers, but then there are nights like this. Nights where you remember why presence matters, why listening matters. It's easy to get jaded in a city like this. Easy to assume everyone's looking for a handout or a shortcut. But that's not what I saw tonight. I saw people doing their best in a world that keeps moving the finish line. I saw pain, yes, but I also saw grace in the woman defending strangers, in the man finally listening, in the nurse trying to hold on. Even in the silence between rides, something shifted. Maybe that's the heart of it. Homelessness isn't just about roofs and rent. It's about belonging, about being part of something. When we treat people like problems to be solved instead of humans to be supported, we all lose. The city gets colder, the cracks grow deeper, but if we show up, if we care, if we act, maybe we can build something stronger, ride by ride, word by word, person by person. I accepted another ride, a middle-aged man going to a late AA meeting. 15 years sober, he told me, tapping a medallion on his keychain. Would have been dead if someone hadn't taken a chance on me. I glanced at him in the mirror. What turned it around? He smiled. A stranger bought me breakfast one morning, sat with me like I mattered. Didn't say much, just listened. That was the first time in years I felt human. He paused. After that, I checked in the rehab, haven't looked back. We rode in silence for a bit. Then he said, "You know, homelessness is less about losing a home and more about losing hope." I nodded slowly. I believed that. He continued, "People think it's about laziness or weakness, but it's mostly pain that's been ignored for too long." As I dropped him off, he shook my hand. "Thanks for the ride, man, and thanks for seeing us." Us, that word stuck with me. He wasn't talking about just himself. He meant the forgotten, the judged, the dismissed. People who still had stories,
still had worth. That night, it became clearer. The first step to ending homelessness isn't building homes, it's restoring hope. The rain started falling as I accepted one last ride for the night. A woman in a raincoat flagged me down outside a grocery store. Her name was Anita. She looked worn out but kind, maybe in her late 40s. As she settled in, she apologized. "Sorry if I smell like produce. I just finished my shift." I told her not to worry. My car had seen worse. We started talking, and she shared how she was saving up for an apartment. Right now, me and my daughter are staying in one of those weekly motels. It's all we can afford. My chest tightened. "How old is she?" I asked. 12, she said with a smile. "Smart kid. Reads everything she can get her hands on." I nodded. "She sounds strong." "She is," Anita replied, her voice wavering. "Stronger than me some days." We rode quietly for a moment, the windshield wipers keeping rhythm. "You ever feel invisible?" she asked suddenly. I looked at her in the mirror. "Yeah, all the time." She smiled. "Then you know, that's what being poor feels like the world walks through you." I couldn't say anything, because she was right. As I pulled up to her motel, I caught a glimpse of the building. Peeling paint, flickering light over the entryway, 2 broken-down cars parked out front. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a pause in someone's story. "Thanks again," Anita said, stepping out with her bags. "This ride saved me from the rain." I watched her walk up the steps, the fabric of her raincoat clinging to her shoulders, her keys jingling like a reminder of borrowed safety. I wondered what it must be like to tuck your child in at night with sirens outside and walls that shake from every footstep. To pretend everything's fine when nothing is. To be strong when no one's watching. That's the face of modern homelessness. Working moms, kids with homework, people who smile so their kids don't worry. We think it's tents and cardboard signs. Sometimes it's a motel room with a faulty lock and a mother praying her daughter doesn't ask too many questions. As I pulled off, I felt heavier, not just tired, moved, the kind of weight that doesn't go away with sleep, the kind that sits on your soul and asks, "What more can you do?" Driving home, I passed all the places I usually ignore when I'm off the clock. The alley behind the bank, the underpass near the rail yard, the bus stop by the closed-down diner. I saw them, people curled under blankets, some standing in the rain with plastic bags over their heads, others just sitting, waiting. For what, I don't know. Morning? A miracle? Anything. I used to look away, used to speed up and pretend I didn't see them. But I couldn't do that anymore. Not after today. Not after all the stories, the eyes, the quiet strength. These weren't strangers anymore. They were names and voices and memories. They were people. And I knew that if we keep treating them like background noise, like a problem instead of a reflection, we'll lose something we can't get back, our humanity. Because how we treat the most vulnerable says everything about who we are, not as individuals, but as a nation, as a community, as a species. The rain got heavier, but I didn't rush home. I let it soak in, all of it. The questions, the guilt, the hope, and maybe, just maybe, a sliver of purpose too.
I pulled into my apartment lot just after midnight. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and shimmering under the streetlights. As I sat there in the driver's seat, engine off, keys in hand, I thought about everything. The woman defending strangers, the man in recovery, the mother saving pennies in a motel, the nurse who smiled through exhaustion, and me, just a driver, just a guy trying to make ends meet. But tonight, I'd been more than that. I'd been a witness, a listener, a reminder. We talk a lot about fixing homelessness with money, policies, and shelters, and those are all important. But maybe the first step is smaller than that. Maybe it starts with seeing, really seeing, the people behind the statistics, the stories behind the silence, the worth behind the worn shoes and tired eyes. I stepped out of the car and let the night air hit me. It smelled like wet cement and second chances. And as I walked to my door, I whispered a silent promise to never forget what I saw tonight. Because once you truly see people, you can't unsee them. And once you care, you don't get to stop. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. My body ached from too many hours in the car, but something else pulled me out of bed. That lingering feeling that maybe I needed to do more than just drive and observe. I opened my laptop and started searching. Volunteer shelters, outreach programs, food banks, anything local. There were more listings than I expected. Some were full, some needed help, others just wanted someone to talk to people. Not preach, just be present. That felt manageable. I signed up for a weekend shift at a mobile soup kitchen. Just one shift, just a few hours. But it was a start. I didn't expect to save the world. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just didn't want to forget those faces. That nurse, that mother, that recovering man. They reminded me that silence is complicity, and indifference is a choice. I don't have all the answers. I probably never will. But I do have time. I have hands. I have a voice. And maybe that's enough to start tipping the scales. Not all the way, but just enough to matter. Just enough to say, I see you. You're not invisible. That afternoon, I picked up a ride from the local university. 2 students, probably no older than 20, arguing about a paper on poverty. It's all systemic, one said. Capitalism makes winners and losers. The other rolled her eyes. Some people just don't work hard enough. I almost laughed. The whole argument sounded like a textbook come to life. But I kept quiet, driving through parts of the city I now saw differently. They asked me what I thought as we passed a familiar tent encampment. You see this stuff every day, the first student said. Who's right? I took a breath. It's complicated. Some people make bad choices, others have no choices to begin with. But blaming them doesn't fix anything. Compassion isn't about agreement, it's about understanding. They went silent. I wasn't trying to win an argument, just planting seeds. That's what conversations do. They dig into places we didn't know needed tilling. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they grow. Not overnight, but eventually. I dropped them off and watched them walk away, still talking, but maybe listening now too. That's all I could hope for, that they'd leave the ride a little less certain and a little more open. Driving back toward downtown, I noticed a new tent, blue and tattered, set up near an old tire shop. A man sat outside, sketching something on cardboard. I slowed down just enough to see. It was a face, a portrait, probably of someone he missed, or maybe himself from better days. It struck me how, even in hardship, people still create, still hold on to pieces of beauty. The world sees him as homeless, but he's also an artist, a storyteller, a survivor. We forget that people don't stop being human just because they lose housing. They still laugh, still cry, still hope. That tent might have held more resilience than most boardrooms. I drove past slowly, not to gawk, but to witness. It felt like sacred space. That's the thing I've learned. When you stop long enough to really see people, you discover things that challenge your beliefs. They're not all addicts. They're not all lazy. Many are just broken by things they couldn't control. And yet, there they are, surviving. That kind of strength deserves more than pity. It deserves respect, maybe even admiration. Because surviving this system, that's a kind of heroism no movie ever tells you about. I pulled over to a quiet park, killed the engine, and just sat. watching the world move. Dogs chasing balls, kids laughing, an old man feeding birds from a bench. It was peaceful, almost unreal compared to the stories I'd absorbed over the last 24 hours. But that's life, isn't it? It holds joy and pain at once. It lets kids giggle while someone sleeps under a bridge a mile away. That contradiction used to make me angry. Now it just makes me aware. We don't have to eliminate beauty to acknowledge suffering. We just need to let them exist together and choose to respond. That's the heart of change. Not fixing everything, not carrying guilt, but choosing awareness over apathy, compassion over comfort. I looked at the time. My shift at the soup kitchen was in 2 days. It didn't feel like much, but it felt like something. The park filled with more laughter, lighter, and I wondered, what if every person did just one small thing every week? How different would our cities look? How many tents would disappear? How many stories would change course? That thought stayed with me as I started the engine again.
As the day ended and twilight settled in, I took one last ride request. Just a short drop-off to a church hosting a community event. When I pulled up, I saw volunteers handing out coats, warm meals, even haircuts. I watched as a man hugged his child, both of them smiling as they carried plates of food. It hit me. This is what community looks like. Not perfection, not wealth, just presence. People helping people. No politics, no judgment, just kindness in action. I didn't need to stay long to understand the message. Help is most powerful when it's local, consistent, and human. As I drove away, I didn't feel tired. I felt full. Not because the problem was solved, but because I no longer felt powerless against it. We can all do something, whether it's driving someone, listening, donating, voting, or simply not looking away. Homelessness isn't a statistic. It's a series of human stories waiting to be heard. And tonight, I heard them, I carried them, and I promised I wouldn't forget. Because in the end, that's how we begin to fix a broken world, by caring enough to see it and brave enough to act. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of quiet purpose. I didn't suddenly become an activist or change careers, but something in me had undeniably shifted. I started my day like usual, coffee, keys, checked the app, but this time I felt different behind the wheel. It wasn't about the ride count or the miles anymore. It was about the moments, the people, the stories. My first passenger that day was an elderly woman, headed to her doctor's appointment. We didn't talk much, just small chat, but even in that, I found value. Maybe she needed a kind driver. Maybe that ride was her only conversation of the day. That's the thing. Helping doesn't always mean grand gestures. Sometimes it's being steady, reliable, present. Later that day, I passed the same encampment under the bridge, same faces, same setup. But this time, I slowed down. Not to judge, not to complain, but to remember. Every person there has a story, a thread that unraveled, a dream that derailed, and somewhere along the line, a system that failed. I couldn't change it all, but I could refuse to forget them. And in this world, remembering is a form of resistance. I kept driving through the day, seeing the city in layers, not just the surface beauty or the chaos, but the spaces in between. The sandwich shop giving out free meals after close. The librarian who left books out overnight for people without library cards. The older couple who stacked blankets in the back of their van every winter and passed them out, no questions asked. These were small acts, but they added up. The real fight against homelessness wasn't always in speeches or sweeping laws. It was in quiet actions, repeated with love. I used to think the world was too broken to fix, that people didn't care. But the truth is, many do. They just don't know where to start. I'd found my start behind the wheel of a car, a seat that gave me a front row view of both struggle and grace.
Maybe we all need to stop waiting for someone else to do the big thing and just do our small thing. That's how the tide turns. Not all at once, but inch by inch. And one day, we'll look up and see the shoreline again. Later that week, I showed up for my shift at the mobile soup kitchen. Nervous, unsure, but ready. They handed me gloves, a name tag, and a ladle. I stood behind a folding table next to a guy named Rick who'd been volunteering for years. "You get used to it," he said, smiling. "The faces, the pain, the gratitude. You won't want to stop." And he was right. Within an hour, I felt more connected than I had in months. Every thank you, every tired smile, every brief exchange was a thread weaving something stronger than sympathy, solidarity. I wasn't above them. I wasn't saving them. I was with them. Just a guy, serving soup to another guy who needed it. That simplicity humbled me. At one point, a woman came through the line with 2 kids and said, "We've been living in our car for 4 days. This is our first warm meal this week." I didn't know what to say, but I smiled. I handed her extra bread. I made sure she saw my eyes when I said, "You're welcome," because that's what she deserved. Not just food, but dignity. It costs nothing to give, but it means everything. By the end of the evening, I was exhausted, but in a good way. Not the kind of tired that comes from work you hate, but the kind that follows purpose. I walked back to my car under the stars, thinking about every hand I'd touched, every story I'd glimpsed, every moment I'd shared. They were burned into me now, these faces, not as burdens, but as reminders. Reminders that we're all in this together, that change isn't abstract, it's personal. I may never fix homelessness, I may never end poverty, but I'll keep showing up, I'll keep talking, I'll keep seeing. Because the moment we stop seeing, we stop caring. And when we stop caring, we stop being human. That's what the rideshare job taught me. That's what every mile, every encounter, every late-night conversation whispered into my soul. And now I carry those whispers like a promise to myself, to them, and to the city that's still learning how to love all its people, especially the ones it forgot, especially them.
So, here's what I'll leave you with, in case this story finds you someday. Reader, listener, writer, whoever you are. The next time you drive past someone holding a sign, don't just see the sign, see the person. The next time you hear someone say it's their fault, ask why. Ask deeper. Look longer. And if you can, do something, however small. Buy a meal. Offer a smile. Speak up. Vote for policies that house people, not punish them. And most of all, remember, homelessness is not a flaw in someone's character. It's a failure of the system. And we are the system. All of us. The good news? That means we can change it. One conversation, one act, one ride at a time. I'm still driving, still learning, still hoping. And maybe that's all any of us can do. Keep going, with our hearts open and our eyes wide. Because the truth is, no one is too far gone. No one is unworthy of a second chance. And sometimes, all it takes is for someone to care, truly care. I do now. I hope you will too. Moral lessons. Empathy is not weakness, it is strength. Seeing others as human, especially when they are suffering, is the beginning of real change. Homelessness is complex, not a moral failure. Mental health, domestic abuse, job loss, medical debt, and systemic injustice all contribute to it. Silence equals complicity. Ignoring the suffering of others makes us part of the problem. Speaking up matters. We're all closer to the edge than we think. One illness, one layoff, one accident, and any of us could be facing the same fate. Small actions have great impact. A sandwich, a conversation, or simply listening can restore someone's dignity. Compassion must cost us something to be real. If our concern stops where our comfort begins, then it's not compassion, it's convenience. The system needs fixing, not the people caught in it. It's time to stop blaming individuals and start repairing what's broken around them. Homelessness is not inevitable. It's a policy choice. With better priorities, we can create a world where everyone has a place to call home. Thanks for watching. Please leave comments, like, share, and subscribe so that you will be the first to be notified of part 3 of this series about a married couple who, due to no fault of theirs, end up in an encampment.